Good morning. This is the second week in our series on awareness and consciousness. Each month this year we have a different focus, and this is the focus for this month, February. Self-awareness by itself is not enough. You've got to do something with it. That's what we've been talking about. There's a power for good in the universe, and you and I can use it or not. Now, to know that I have awareness, to know that I have a mind is good. And doing good with my mind is even better. So last week we started with the topic, what is religion? And this week we're following up with the question, what is spirituality? Now these topics come from short essays in the book Living the Science of Mind that we are using this year. And if you weren't here last week, no worry, you can catch up. We have a full archive of our videos and audios on our website, www.cslsr.org. But briefly, what we talked about last week was that religion is the practice, the things that we do that reconnect us to our essential nature, to the higher power that lives in us and all around us. And our founder, Ernest Holmes, said that anything that we do that helps us connect in that way is good. So whether we say prayers, or we make affirmations, or we do selfless service, or we repeat beautiful passages, or, as he wrote, we just sit in quiet contemplation of your thoughts, realizing the splendor of life, you will do well. Isn't that wonderful? Because all methods that lead to the awareness of the creative power of the universe, all methods are good. See, that means no one size fits all. There's a path for you. Now, as I read that, I notice what he didn't say. He didn't say that if you sit quietly and think about life's problems, he didn't say, if you sit quietly and think about what other people should do. No, he used a very mindful word. He said, sit and realize the splendor of life. In other words, get in sync with reality and the beauty of being and stay with it until it is real to you, more real than anything else that is going on. And I think that takes practice. It takes practice for me to bring my thought back over and over again to what is good and true and beautiful and amazing and timeless and holy about life. And so my religion is, the practices that get me there, and spirituality is the feeling of being there. And so I want to use my practices over and over again to get there, frequently and well, so that I know my way there, even without my practices. Because I don't want to become dependent on my practices. I want to become so familiar with my heart's natural home that it is as real to me as can be, more real than anything else. Again, my religion, my practices to get there. Spirituality, the feeling. Now, what is that feeling? Well, that's a little more complicated because it's so personal to each person. It's difficult to describe. But I can tell you what it is to me, and maybe that will help you know what it is to you. To me, spirituality is a feeling of everything is going to be okayness, no matter what is going on. And it is a feeling of awe and wonder I'm trying to think of examples, and I was thinking about that time when I climbed to the bottom of the Grand Canyon, and I wasn't physically prepared to do so. When I got to the bottom, my calves, I think I must have pulled them out. It was so sore that I couldn't climb back out. I had to wait a day longer at the bottom of the Grand Canyon. And I remember there sitting in that beautiful, massive river, watching it as all the water flowed by, and it occurred to me how vast nature and life was. And in a moment, I realized the vastness and the awe of that moment in nature displaced the pain. And for a moment, it was as if I realized this awe had always been there, but I'd been distracted by the pain. I'm thinking about sometimes when we prepare to begin a class at the center, and we'll all come from wherever we've been, and our minds and our thoughts are in different places, and we take a moment to invite silence so we can meditate and pray. And it takes a while for everything to settle down, but then there is this moment in the room, and it's as if everything locks into gear. And you can feel it. There's this silence, and it's, that moment when we realize we didn't bring that silence in. It was always there, and it feels good and peaceful. Or I'm thinking of these spiritual pilgrimages we go to different places in the world, like the one in Bali, where we'll start every morning and we will recite 108 times one of the most sacred prayers of Hinduism. And it takes a while, because in the beginning the chanting isn't together, and it sort of fits in. There's this moment it locks in, and it's all together, and it's as if all the worry and stress is sucked out of the room. And then after the chant, there's this beauty, very quiet, and we realize it was always there. It was always available. Or I'm thinking about the time when I was a law enforcement chaplain, and one of the difficult tasks that law enforcement chaplains have to do is to make death notifications. It's very difficult work to do, And I remember a particularly difficult case where, the family took it very hard, because as soon as they opened the door, they identified the police officer and the chaplain were there to do something. And it was heart-wrenching. And even so, I remember a moment standing there in the midst of all this grief and realizing it was very, very quiet inside. As if I was in touch with the timelessness and the holiness of the moment. I realized that everything in my life had prepared me to be there in that moment. And that feeling was always available to me. And it helped me to be present for the family. And now that I have felt that silence, that awe, that meaningfulness, I can remember it. I can remember that all oneness. I can call upon it when I'm stressed. I can return to it when I'm dealing with loss or frustration or difficulty. That's something what the feeling of spirituality is like. And in Living the Science of Mind, Ernest Holmes writes about it, and he says, spirituality is rather an elusive thing. I cannot think of a better illustration to use than to compare it with the idea of beauty, which an artist entertains to create art. Now, we do not say that the artist has great beauty. We say that they have an appreciation for beauty. The artist feels the beauty, or senses its presence, and to a degree communes with it. In drawing it, he writes, into their own soul, that they might outbreathe it through their art. No, I like this metaphor. The beauty was always there. The artist tunes into it, senses it, brings it forth into expression, like Michelangelo brought forth the magnificent statue of David from that block of marble that other artists rejected. So to me then, spirituality is the atmosphere in and around a person who sees, senses holiness, oneness, and draws it into their awareness so that they can breathe it out through their living. Whether they're falling in love, rebuilding a home, helping a friend or a neighbor with a tragedy, writing their first resume, whatever they're doing, some part of them remains aware, rooted in the divine, aware of that quiet, holy, timeless zone inside. And he says in this little book, when he's talking about art, and he says, perfect technique alone does not result in great art. That's so good, I made a slide out of it. Perfect technique alone does not result in great art. Because I got to take that in. So my spirituality isn't a performance. It's not a perfect performance. I'm thinking of a master class that I attended when I was studying music. In a master class, the students come and present themselves, and the master listens and interacts and makes commentary. And I remember this one student got up before the master and performed a piece technically perfectly. It was literally, and it was a very difficult piece to perform. And when he was done, the master said, "Thank you, next." And there was this moment, and the student said, "Do you have any feedback?" And I remember clearly the master said, "I can't teach you anything until you love the music." Whoa. You see, you gotta love the music for it to play, for it to come alive. You see, it was flawless what the student did. It was flawless, but you might also say it was heartless. Another student in that same class stood before the master and played, and he made quite a few errors, quite a bunch of them. But he played the music with such conviction, and he poured his heart into it. And it was like he was telling us a story about something that was so deeply important to him. And even though there were no words, we got him. We felt him. And do you know that master spent an hour with him, really working to refine and to draw out even more of that expression. In all of that hour of working, he never once mentioned technique. He never once said that was a wrong note. See, I got to take that in because it's the same with this thing called spirituality. See, spirituality is not simply a prayer or a meditation that is well done. No. It's real, and it's a feeling. And again, what is that feeling? Well, it's hard to describe, but it is most like love. Also, when you say your affirmative prayers or you make your meditations or affirmations, you got to be in love with it. When you say your affirmative prayers, you've got to love it for it to come alive. It's got to mean something to you. You have to pour yourself into it. So we were talking about Wednesday night wisdom. Those free classes, 1 hour, you're welcome to come. We were talking about how important it is for you and me to get our concept of God, our higher power, right with ourselves. We've got to believe what we're saying. We've got to get excited about it because affirmative prayer depends on that. So it doesn't matter if you've got the technique of the 5 steps down, if it doesn't mean anything to you. He writes in Living the Science of Mind, and this is just a short 2-page essay. He says, there is a vast difference between spiritual consciousness and religious dogma or logical arguments. It's an essence diffused. It's a consciousness transcendent. It is a faith that has passed beyond the point of argument into consciousness. Oh, that's good. You know, to be around someone who's defenseless about their conviction and faith, they have no need to convince. They are what they believe. It makes me think of mystics. To me, mystics are women and men who, because of their different practices, have reached a deep understanding of the nature of being, of reality. And typically, they are not fanatical about their particular way or their particular religion, the one that opened them to their understanding. Instead of trying to spread that around, they see their way as one of many possible paths. No need to convince. Dr. David Alt from the Atlanta Spiritual Center, he spoke at a conference a while ago, and he told about the work that he is doing in Cambodia among the poorest of the poor children there, helping to bring fresh water and education to them. And everybody was thrilled about the good work that Science of Mind is doing in the world. And he said, but I want to be absolutely clear with you, he said to us. I am not teaching these people our philosophy. I'm living it by bringing to them what will be helpful. Oh, that's good. There's a good question in that. How am I living what I'm learning about the true nature of my spiritual self? As I awaken, as you awaken to the truth of your spiritual being, what difference is it making to your friends and your family and people on the street? Is it leaking out of your eyes and your love? Is the story of your love affair with being pouring out of you? You know, people who are that in tune with their spiritual nature are not always understood because you can't control them. And they are less interested in religious rules than they are in the experience of oneness and love. See, they don't think the rules are holy. They think the result is holiness. I call people like that mystics, in tune with the mystery of life. And mystics can come from all and any traditions. You could be one too. And if you were, you would have absolutely no desire to bring other people onto your path. You'd be committed to your own because it was the path that brought you to the awareness of what lives in you. But you wouldn't be fanatical about it. You'd be flexible. And you would think of your life as a timeless holiness in progress. And he says in this beautiful book, such a spiritual attitude towards life need not be put into words. But out of the feeling, words will come. And when they do, they will always be correct. That's also so important. In other words, our affirmative prayers are personal. They're not supposed to be a perfect performance. It's what comes out of our mind and words and heart because we've been courting the presence, because we've been sensing, feeling, looking for oneness in the divine. And he says this kind of spirituality cannot be taught, but it can be felt. And it can be practiced, and you can embody it. And each one of us in their own consciousness must experience it in their own way. And their way will always be best for them. Indeed, it will be the only way that they can do it, because in the secret precinct of the mind, which is alone with God, nothing else can enter. It means there is no one closer to God than you. If anything, what your invitation is to love that, to love hanging out with God in the silence of your own heart. It's up to you to develop an intimate relationship with your higher power. In my little book, Ordinary Goodness, on page 190, I wrote about mystics. I want to share this with you. One of the qualities of mystics is that they do have a personal, intimate relationship with their concept of divinity. And intimacy takes time. A close relationship with divinity, like an intimate relationship with a person, takes time and requires steadiness and consistency. You have to share yourself. You have to show yourself. You have to be consistent. You have to be present. You have to be transparent and caring. You have to provide that for intimacy to grow. It's the same with developing a relationship with your concept of divinity, or with life, or with your higher power, or with whatever you want to call it. You know, you can ask yourself, like I am, what can I do today to feel closer to holiness? Or what can I be today to express more of what life has birthed in me? What can I say today to bring more goodness into being? What can I know today that will keep me in close personal contact with the divinity of my being? And Ernest says, in Living the Science Mind, do not wonder whether or not you are spiritual. Rather, accept that you are. In a sense, he writes, you had nothing to do with it. It's just your nature. That's amazing. I did not create my spiritual nature, and you did not create yours. You didn't earn it through acts of kindness and charity. You don't have more of it than anyone else. And you don't have to do anything with it. Or you and I could make it, our spiritual nature, we could make it the thing that our life is centered on, that we draw upon for guidance and direction. So how do we become a little more aware of our spiritual nature? Here are some suggestions. First of all, make a habit out of it by turning whatever you do into a daily thing. Choose something and do it. Whether it's affirmation or prayer or meditation, stick with it. Make it as normal a habit as brushing your teeth. Do it religiously without being superstitious about it or controlling or trying to make other people do it. Do it for you to help you find the way to your heart. Second, practice thinking thoughts of goodwill to all being. In other words, start a habit of thinking kindly. Try the people around you first. And you can use whatever form of prayer or meditation you're familiar with or accustomed to, but if you have none, simply think about the people in your life kindly. Imagine their happiness. This will change you. Third, practice being extraordinarily kind, more than normal, much more than normal. The extra mile. Well, kindness takes subtlety and sensitivity and sincerity, because kindness is not the same as make nice. You can make nice and still not care about the other person. No, you have to be sincere to be truly kind. And through that sincerity, you will begin to feel and see what the mystics are talking about when they say all life is one, connected by a thread of holiness. And practice being present. The opposite of sleepwalking through life. And I think the way to do that is to take time to be alone in silence. And I think the most pleasant place to do that is outside in nature. But if that's not available to you, all you need is a place where you will be undisturbed for 5 to 15 minutes. That's all you need, 5 to 15 minutes, to develop a habit of enjoying the present moment. And during that time alone, you try to notice your environment around you and inside of you, and more than notice it, to pay attention to the stillness, to the timelessness, to the love, to the beauty that was always and already present. Now, for our practice today, I brought along 365 Science of Mind because I want to recommend it to you as a place to begin. It's a meditation for every day of the year. And today's I invite you to breathe in and to exhale, letting your eyes close. Let your consciousness rise above the sense of separation from the power of God. And in just a few moments, you will feel as though you were sitting in the midst of an infinite sea of flowing life. This place in mind where you are right now is the source of everything, the source of all action, the source of all creativity. And it is the innermost part of your very own being. Just as a plant turns to the sun, your thoughts turn naturally to the power of creation and draw it into your own being. In this act of meditation, you are not losing your identity. You are becoming more self-aware than ever before. You are conscious now in a larger way. Conscious that whatever you put your thought to produces definite results in your life. a voice within says, I now climb a ladder of thought that takes me above all confusion. I pass through the clouds of fear and doubt, and I behold light everywhere. I sense the enveloping presence of oneness everywhere. I am at home in God. And then I invite you to take another deep breath and to exhale as we bring this moment of contemplation to a conclusion.